So, just to remind you, the end of part one, we're talking about Henry VIII and him wanting this male heir, and Catherine instead gives him daughter Mary. So, this is going to be what's going to kind of ignite part two of this story. So, Henry is very angry at Catherine for not giving him a boy. She is, trying very hard. They have other pregnancies, um, all of which end in miscarriages. So it was very, very sad. But Catherine was trying to give Henry the male heir that he so badly wants. So in that time period, with kind of royalty, they often have what's called a royal court. And this would be that in their house, they have lots of servants and people that kind of work for them. Oftentimes, many of the closest kind of inner circle for these, upper, royals would often be the sons or daughters of other kind of noble families. And the idea was they'd send their children off, they'd get kind of training in how to run a house and things like that from the king and queen, and then they'd be able to kind of take that back and then better serve positions as like lords or ladies or dukes or earls or duchesses, etc., etc. And so within Catherine's court was a young lady by the name of Anne Boleyn. And Henry, when he meets Anne Boleyn, he falls in love with her. He is like totally obsessed with her because at this point, him and Catherine are both kind of in their like late 20s, early 30s. And Anne Boleyn is a young 17-year-old, and she's incredibly beautiful. And Anne starts to kind of have an affair with Henry. And she is a little manipulative. She starts to tell Henry, she promises him that she will give him a boy if he marries her. So she basically says, if you marry me, I guarantee you I will give you the male heir that you want. And Henry is very intrigued by this. He likes this idea and he's in love with Anne. So he asks the Pope for a divorce. And the Pope basically says no. The Pope tells him, no, I'm not going to give you a divorce from your wife so you can marry your mistress. That's not going to happen. That would go against, our good Catholic faith. And so this is going to just anger Henry further because he wants his name. Here we have another example of the monarch, the king, and religion, the Pope, coming into kind of contact with each other and conflict with each other over kind of who has the authority. And so Henry doesn't really like that he's told no. So he basically says, all right, well, you can't refuse me. So I'm done with you. You can't boss me around anymore. And he decides that he's going to basically leave the Catholic Church. And in doing so, he's going to make a new church. So in order to get his way, Henry decides to convert England to Protestantism. So if you remember, this is right around the time that Martin Luther and, all these new Protestant churches are starting to pop up. So Henry's like, hey, I'm going to jump on this bandwagon and start my own Protestant church. So he converts England to Protestantism so that he can be the head of the church. So he basically makes himself the boss of the church, much like a pope, but kind of just basically says, as king, I am the authority over this church. And he does this so he can grant himself a divorce. And the church that he creates is called the Church of England. And this particular church is just an Anglican church. So if you remember in section 3, when we talked about England and what type of religion they were, they adopted this Anglican church, which was the Church of England, a Protestant church. So now that Henry has his way and he's created this new church, he grants himself his divorce. So he then divorces Catherine. So Catherine's gone and he marries Anne. And so then, shortly after their marriage, Anne gets pregnant and she has Elizabeth I. So he ends up not getting that male heir that he wants again, but instead another daughter, Elizabeth I. So that takes us then to the next part in our story.